Is at Worlds V with a capital W and a capital V, and you can hashtag us OD Talk. So thank you very much for joining us, and I'm going to hand over to Liesel and Ziyanda. I'm very excited to hear about what you have to say this morning.
Thank you so much, Roy. I just quickly want to check. I see Jenny's joined us. Jenny is in Australia, and we sometimes get her to join our morning sessions. It's early evening for her. Sometimes she has to rush off to cook dinner for the kids. So it's nice to have you here, Jenny. I'm just wondering if there's anybody else that's also not from South Africa. Last week we had somebody from the UK join us. I think it's so exciting. The one good thing that's coming from this whole pandemic is that the time zones are seemingly easier to navigate, and we just connect with people all over the world and all over the country even. So yeah, welcome Jenny, and welcome everybody else, and thank you for being here. As Roy said, as we go, just because we're a lot of people, and as you know, Zoom with the interruptions cuts the sound, we'd prefer that you just chat, use the chat function to type questions if they come up for you. But the way we're going to run this morning is we will do a 30-minute Q&A discussion at the end. So if you can stay from 10:30 till 11, we're going to have a more interactive session if you're still here. Otherwise, just type for us in the side. I am recording this session. We are going to put it on our YouTube channel afterwards. There'll be links on our website if anybody wants to go and have a look again or refer anybody else to that. And as Roy said, if you want more of this, longer sessions, more in depth, maybe for your own team, please let us know. Okay, so yesterday me and Z were checking in and just talking about this whole absolutely crazy time that we've been through, and how different people's reactions have been. How a lot of people have seen it as a time to switch off, reset, reflect. For other people, it's been absolutely crazy work-wise. Their schedules have just been way more hectic than before, even though they don't have to sit in the traffic. Some people have taken it emotionally quite harshly because of the fear of losing jobs, losing income, seeing that happen to people around them. So I'm going to just ask Z to start by talking to us a little bit about her own processing and how she went through this especially the first hectic stage, hey Z, the full-on lockdown, where we were all just literally sitting in our houses and only escaping to get the odd piece of groceries. So yeah, over to you, Z. Please share some of your experiences with us.
Thank you, Liesl. Thank you guys for entertaining my thoughts. I by no means, I must make this declaration, I by no means have a monopoly on wisdom or rather better understanding of what we're going through. We're all going through it the best way we know how. So I just thought that in the number of seminars that I have sat on or contributed in, I find that there's commonalities and also differences in how we're dealing with it. And perhaps when we have these type of engagements, that's where we kind of catch each other and look after one another and move along together. So as I was having a conversation with you, Liesl, yesterday, I think the first 10 days was tough for me. I'm an extrovert. I like to go out, and I have a strong personality. I don't like being told what to do, what not to do, which is exactly what the government did because of the virus. It told me where to be and where not to go. And already I felt, that's not my way of doing life. So the first 10 days, you can imagine not being able to go see my friends and just go and relax a little bit after a tough day was difficult. Secondary to that, I experienced, you know, when the mind play games with you. I have sinus and I have an allergy to pollen, so it means I sneeze almost daily, you know, if not daily actually. But for some reason in March, sneezing was a problem for me in that first 10 days. So the mind was telling me, Ziyanda, you already have it, you know, and that wasn't sitting well with me. And I realized that, you know, when people say it is better when you actually are able to manage your own mind or to be in control of your own mind than it being in control of you. In that first days, I think that my mind was just playing games with me, up to a point where I would think I'm symptomatic. I would think I can't breathe, and that would affect my sleeping patterns and so on. It is at that point that I said, embedded in the things that I teach others through talking, through coaching, through facilitating workshops, embedded in those lessons is also mine, you know, or those insights is also my lessons, which speaks to, I then realized that I am not doing okay emotionally. I'm not doing okay mentally if I'm starting to see things that are not there. And that was directly affecting how I was doing my work. So at that point, Lizel, I said, whilst I'm being compassionate and helpful in terms of this process that we're in, compassionate in that there's death involved, there's illness involved, which is tough situations to be in for family members who are infected or affected by the coronavirus. Having that in mind, how else can I change the way I look at this pandemic? What gifts could it be having for us? And the first question that came to mind for me was, what does it mean to be human now? So I wanted to change the way or the direction of my thoughts by introducing a new theme that I could start to think about. And the theme for me was, what does it mean to be human? And all I needed to do was to observe how human beings were interacting with one another, including myself. So that was my first 10 days. The second 11, the next 11 days after that, because the first lockdown was 21 days. The second 11 days after that was really me continuously seeing the gifts that I always say, the gifts that Corona gives. So the Corona keeps on giving. So I started to see the gifts because I started to shift how I was thinking about it and how I was feeling about it. And so I started to share the gifts that I think I now am able to share with everyone in this type of conversations that we're going to have today.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people were also struggling through that. So you said observing how people interact, being human, but even that was so surreal because people were not interacting the way they were interacting for their entire lives before this period.
Yeah.
So suddenly interaction was almost also something that had to happen on a platform like this. I know for me personally, the first few weeks was hectic. It was Zoom meeting after we called it Zoomathons every day. And then in the afternoons or the evenings, there would be Zoom connections with friends. Those of us who still had wine might have had a glass of wine together on a Zoom chat. We even had braais on Zoom on Saturdays and Sundays. But that just makes the interaction so different because even just, it definitely quenched my soul a bit to feel connected to people. But there was still you have to shut up until it's your turn to talk, otherwise the sound cuts out. And you have to have connectivity, and you have to worry about your data running out, and you have to carry a phone or a laptop or a pad with you everywhere you go if you want people to see you. And the whole human side of that was just so different. So tell us a little bit more about how that affected your thinking and your processing.
Yeah, so I like how you're saying, so interacting with others kind of quenched something in you, right? And to just see people. I think everyone who has never believed that as human beings, we are energy beings, probably probably knows that now. Because I remember the first 21 days when you could go to the shop to go buy essentials, the fear was palpable. You could sense I even say the sun was gloomy. There was something very heavy about the atmosphere because I suppose we were all gripped by fear, you know, of this pandemic. So that's the first thing I noticed. I didn't want to go outside. It was kind of too gray for my liking. It was too doom for my liking. And that's the power of vibrating in likeness. And at that particular point in time, I suppose, we were in fear. And so the energy was picking up on that. And that wasn't helping us a lot, you know. And in my view, the fact that we also had media professionals whose languaging was baked and burst in fear wasn't helping us at all. You know, it was actually exacerbating how we were feeling. And that's number one for me. Number two, it's interesting that you should talk about Zooms and back-to-back Zoom meetings and so on. One of my clients said to me during a coaching session, she says, Ziyanda, it feels like the traffic has left the roads and it has actually landed itself in my calendar. I now cannot even breathe. It's even tough to take a 5 minutes to go to the bathroom because back-to-back meetings from 8 to 8. That's what's going on now, which means for the first 21 days, again, human beings were also being in this space of being busy with being busy. Before the pandemic, we were just that. We're running around, meetings here and there. Everyone is doing everything. No one has time to stop and think and just regroup. So I think in the first 21 days, we're still doing things as we used to do. It's just that now everything was in our calendars as opposed to being on the roads, in the meeting rooms and so on. The other thing I've picked up from clients was that the mental illness conversations were starting to happen. And a lot of leaders were saying, this pandemic is causing people to be mentally ill. And a differing view I had about that was, could it be possible that we had prioritized face-to-face seeing each other, but we're not listening, we're not paying attention to one another? Because it is very possible that the mental illness did showcase itself when we're still interacting face-to-face. But the lesson to learn here is we are not seeing each other. We're not paying attention to one another, which is what I think one of the things that leaders need to rethink going forward beyond the pandemic or even during the pandemic. The third one, Liesl, for me, that was what actually blew me away was, okay, Z, the car is in the garage, okay? The money is in the bank. You can only use limited amount of money and mostly you can buy online and that's it. The third thing is the clothes are in the cabinet or wherever you put them. So these are also the material things that we often use to distract ourselves from what we need to be dealing with about ourselves. And all of that was put away. Left in front of the situation is me as the human being. Who am I? What does it mean now to be human without these distractions that have been keeping me busy with being busy? So those are the type of questions that I was starting to ask myself. And I realized actually there was a beautiful benefit and gift that came with the pandemic and the first lockdown specifically. It felt to me like we were told or regulated to stay at home and only go out if it's essential. In other words, for me, it translated as, in my experience, it translated as I am being taught or told or instructed to sit within me. I need to come, sit down and be devoid of all of these distractions and pay attention to who am I? What about me needs attention? What about me am I struggling with? And for me personally, the journey started with my emotional. Remember I said I wasn't feeling mentally, emotionally okay during the pandemic. There were a lot of things that I couldn't do that I wanted to do. And before the pandemic, I used to say, people know who are close to me would know, I used to say, I'm an extrovert, I don't like staying at home. Being at home for more than 5 hours makes me feel claustrophobic. Those are my words, my regular words. But it was a lie. It was that I was avoiding the silence of being with myself, with my thoughts and my emotions. And I had to interrogate, what am I running away from? And let me tell you, I found it. So really, the gift in the first 21 days for me was go home, home being self, and go and interrogate who this is without the physical distractions, without sitting in traffic for 2 hours, without being busy with being busy, being back-to-back meetings, boardroom, all of that stuff. Who are you? Because I suppose if we are able to answer that question for ourselves, then we are able to assist others who are grappling with the same thing in the manner that we lead. In other words, if we are able to self-lead, then we'll be able to lead others. But it starts with us. So that was also my realization in the first 21 days.
Now, in many of the conversations that we had in our regular morning check-ins, something that came up for a few people were that if you're not used to sitting with yourself in silence, how do you now do it? Because I'm like you, I'm extrovert. I want people, I want action, I want stuff. I've never gone and sat quietly and just allowed myself to be with myself. And that takes practice, doesn't it?
It takes practice, Lizzle, and it also takes a lot of courage. And I always say, and it's said by other scholars that courage is not the absence of fear. With fear in your gut, you must still do the things that you think are necessary to take you to the next level. So it became very clear to me that how I was thinking and showing up and doing before the pandemic probably is null and void. So whatever strategy I even had between January and February was null and void. How I thought I was going to approach it wasn't going to work anymore. So I had to come back and sit and say, okay, Ziyanda, what are you struggling with at a personal level? Because again, if I am to interact with people, mostly online, it means I gotta have my emotions / my energy right. Because now I'm no longer in front of them to hug them. They must sense me from afar, which meant I had to clean up this house. Now the car I used to hide behind, the big shoes and the nice stuff, is not there. Then human beings are gonna sense each other from a human to human perspective. So it became necessary for me to regroup, because how I do business going forward is going to depend mostly on my energy. And who I show up as is really, or rather what I attract is who I am, and who I am is my thoughts and my feelings, you see. So that for me, I could not lose the possibility of new opportunities because I'm afraid to sit with myself. So I had to say, which one is going to be the toughest devil to deal with? That was number one. Number two, I actually started to appreciate the environment level. I could be wrong. Most human beings are in perpetual denial of the fact that they themselves are nature. As a result, when they make decisions in the boardroom, they actually don't think of nature because they don't think they are nature themselves. And this was very, very one of the gifts of the pandemic as well, because I started to see that the birds were, all of a sudden, there's too many birds around my house. And they are on the ground, they are eating something in the grass. I started to appreciate the grass. And I started to appreciate the air, you know? And I imagined these birds must be having a nice time without us polluting the roads or the air with our emissions and stuff. So I started to think, could it be that this is the era where, because we've been talking about mindfulness, we've been talking about resocializing and having new norms and values. Could it be that we now need a community generation of leaders that first think about the fact that they are nature themselves before the prophets? And what impact would that have for us going forward in how we lead as human beings? Secondly, the ability to sit in the discomfort of your own company with all that you think about yourself. It helps you to appreciate sitting with someone else and paying attention to them, which therefore should mean that going forward, we should be able to see, because mental illness shows itself. Going forward, if we were to go back to the office, because you've sat with yourself and you understand what happens below the iceberg, and you understand it for yourself because you've gone through it, one should have a compassion and appreciation when others are going through the same thing and walk with them because they understand how that shifts the human being. So I suppose how we lead now has been completely overhauled. Leading self, leading of others, leading of organizations, if we've taken any lessons from this pandemic.
Yeah, definitely. And something that also came up for us a lot in the past 9 weeks, has been where people had to almost re-look at their own purpose. So purpose was quite a big subject in a lot of our conversations where a lot of people have said, what we as an organization do, the way we do it has changed, but also me. What is the value that I add? What is the value that we add as an organization? What is the value that I add as an OD practitioner, as a coach, as a human being? And those are really, really, really hard questions to sit with.
Yes, It is. And look, the transformation, and we call it transformation because it's a process. If one would imagine how the butterflies, what do you call it, that transformation journey of a caterpillar to a butterfly, I suppose we're going through the same thing. It's definitely going to be honest, raw, ugly, hopeful, frustrating, beautiful, divine, all of those things together. And we've got to embrace them and keep an open mind, because otherwise we won't grow, you know? And often now people who are struggling, I remember some of my clients were struggling with managing teams using Zoom, because some of them were micromanagers. And so now working online, working from home took away that wanting to control. Mm-hmm. And instead of us focusing on why you feel frustrated by not micromanaging people, we were focusing on, are they doing what they need to do? Can you measure it? Are you getting the information quick enough? Secondary to that, we had to go and debunk why micromanage. Where is the sense of controlling coming from? What is this fear that is fueling this control? What about that do you need to shift? Which is the raw and ugly part of the transformation. But of course, once you transform, everyone knows, once you're self-aware and conscious, it's beautiful, it's liberating, it's free. You become so free of even other people's perceptions about you, because you get to understand yourself better. Speaking of purpose, absolutely. Organizational purposes will shift. The more people's purposes become crystal clear, the more the organizational visions and purposes will also shift with that. And we are in a process of, I think, of solving problems, or we are about to solve problems that we know nothing about today. And we're gonna keep an open mind for that. We're gonna trust self for that. We're gonna hear and listen to our intuitions for that. And yes, backed up by the IQ stuff, technical knowledge and skills and so on. But what has become very clear is that emotional intelligence is very critical right now.
Mm. Yeah, and what you said about the transformation, my colleague Christo, who's on this call. Christo, I'm quickly going to test if you're there and if you can speak.
Yes, I'm here.
I'd like you to just tell us about the transformation of the butterfly, because it was such a beautiful. Wow! Now you've got a video and a photo.
Yes. Oh.
There we go. There we go. The story that we had about the you know what I'm talking about, the transformation. I don't want to spoil about the becoming completely liquid before
yes.
you share that with us.
Well, it's when the worm the worm puts itself in a pupa, and inside the pupa the worm then completely dissolves. I actually went and read up about it a little bit, because I was intrigued by what happens in that thing. But you literally become liquid, so you have to completely, as a worm, speaking now as a worm, and you know there's that quote from Dante that says, "Oh, humans, you worms, you don't know what you are butterflies." Is you have to give up the worm form completely. That's pretty difficult, because we're quite used to being worms, crawling wherever we want to go and eating leaves and doing worm things. We don't even know what's this butterfly that's inside us, but we can't get there without becoming completely liquid. And the interesting thing of that is you can't open the pupa to look at that, because then you will destroy the whole process. So it happens a little bit in a black box.
Yeah, I just thought that was so profound, that the worm becomes completely liquid before I guess it's part of the transformation, and that's what Z was just talking about, that ugly part of of sitting with yourself, being with yourself, transforming. And then also, Christo, what you said was, you can't open the pupa, because then you will kill what can become. That's almost like, if we use that metaphor, that there's a time that there's something very sacred about being, I don't know, protected by a shell while I transform. where you are completely, I guess, vulnerable to the elements.
You're actually held in such a way that you are allowed to disintegrate completely. And I think that's, for me, Z, as well, interesting about what you and Liesl mentioned about the ugly parts I think to a certain extent it does feel like a disintegration. A disintegration of your sense of who you are, of your personality, of your identity at certain levels, a disintegration of your purpose, because purpose is maybe not such a fixed thing. And all of the things that you have latched onto to give you some sort of sense of who you are in this world, all of that disintegrates. Now that's very uncomfortable.
Yeah, thank you for that, Christo. I quite like the disintegrating part and the part where you cannot open the pupa, which means the pupa cannot open itself. Therefore, I cannot get someone else to come open me. I should not want that, because if I do that, I die, which is exactly the same transformation process that we as human beings, we have to go through right now, or rather regularly even, as we raise our sense of self-awareness and consciousness. You almost have to, you have to sit with yourself alone and look at the ugly, the raw, the beautiful, and the divine on your own, which is where inside the pupa. No one else must come and fast track this thing for you, because I think also the beauty is in the journey of it all. As you transform one phase or one step at a time, that's where the power is. And also the part about, so I cannot open the disintegration. So I liken it to, because Lisa said the transformation must be difficult. I agree, the process is difficult, but the outcome is splendid. Because now on this other side, you are able to go sit with yourself and look at it for what it is. Because what you can't see, you can't shift. Once you see it, you know you're gonna shift it. That's what you look forward to when you are conscious and self-aware. But before that, before you learn to those techniques of deep diving your own subconscious mind, you'll struggle a little bit. It's a practice things like riding a bicycle until you get it. And the formula is almost the same all the time, And in terms of disintegration, I want to liken it to the iceberg metaphor with the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. As we all know, we have been socialized from our families, from church, from school, from work, from everywhere, the community, Xhosa culture, everywhere, right? And there's been pieces of socialization that are saved in my subconscious mind that are not serving me as an adult, 42 years old today. And so this disintegration is really to pull this thing apart and look at it for what it is, and consciously decide which of these things am I taking forth, which am I leaving behind, because they actually had nothing to do with me to start with. So the disintegration from a human transformation perspective is also that. You pull it apart, even if your mother, whom you adore, instilled a fear of snakes or fear of frogs in you. If you're inquisitive about how a frog operates today, because you know you are nature and you have to pay attention to those things, you're gonna have to overhaul this thing, as uncomfortable as it is, because in it sits your own power and your own consciousness. So I suppose that's where we say courage is not the absence of fear. Yeah.
Oh, courage is not the absence of fear.
Yeah.
Z, so you've got some tips for us on how to go through this process and how to become the butterfly on the other side.
Me and Christo are going to share how we can use, we've got a lot of modalities, right, that we can use. But I think today I said, Christo, we can look at the theory that assists the human being on the first steps really of how to start transforming, disintegrating the subconscious mind so that you can be reborn. Those who church or go to church or are religious would probably know this, who are Christian. Specifically, when I used to be a church goer, we used to be told you are born again. And I today differ with that. This is the process, transforming the mind, how you think, your worldview is actually the rebirth process, the transformation that we're talking about. Because after this process, you then really meet yourself. not the version that your mother tweaked you to become. You, not the ones that your community made you become because you're a woman, but the real you, which is the way the beauty is, Lizzle. But I thought before we even get to the theory, Christo, I'll put the slides on. I'm not sure if I can share on my side. I suppose I can be given the permission. Eh? All right, so Christo, I just took some of our presentation slides just to assist our colleagues to just see in the process what you can you start with, and how would you transition through the process when you are with yourself, and so that we can give them practical ideas of what they can start with. But before we start there, Liz, can we please just get maybe 1 or 2 people who can share with us how have they been experiencing the lockdown, and because everyone must go through it authentically, the way they experience it.
Yeah, so I'm going to be very cheeky because I know some of the people here. Zoya, I know you are super courageous and really into this topic. So may I ask you to share with us how you processed it or how you are processing it?
Okay. Thanks, Lizzle. And thanks, Ziyanda, for sharing some of your thoughts. So for me, it's been very interesting because, and I think this is applicable to most people, it's done an up and down. It hasn't been this kind of constant, but there's just been this up and down on this continuum. And sometimes I feel like I'm moving 5 steps forward only to feel like I'm moving 10 steps backward the following day. And it's just having to breathe through those moments because of the noise that's moved into the calendars. But in the midst of all of that, I must be honest, I have absolutely reveled in this time. I often speak of how I can't handle traffic. I hate driving. And in having made the decision to start an own business and to leave corporate, part of it was because of the recognition that I wanted to be able to still the noise and to not be distracted or to manage the distractions and the noise around me. So I appreciate the time it has forced us to spend together as a family. I appreciate that it's brought me closer to the work that my children are doing at school. I appreciate that, you know, I've just become closer and bonded a little bit more with my husband. As the lockdown progressed, I must be honest that I started to feel that claustrophobia Z spoke of and this need to go out. And I remember specifically one day where I went out and I was looking for bread rolls. I'd wanted to make something and I did not want bread. I wanted fluffy bread rolls. And I couldn't find them anywhere. I drove around endlessly looking for these bread rolls. And it got later as I was driving and 2 things came to mind. The first was this deep awareness of the privilege that I hold and that I carry and that sometimes I take for granted or pretend to not know. So my privilege was really kind of I was forced to confront my privilege, what it means, and therefore what responsibilities I have if I live in awareness of the privileges I have. The second was that I was also deeply touched by how, as I drove around, as it got dark, I went to the last place, which was like a filling station, a garage. And there were 2 people who were begging outside a garage. It was quite empty, so that nervousness started to take over. Anyway, I gave the one guy something. I couldn't find my bread roll still, but I decided to give the one guy some loose change, and I bought some goodies in the garage and I hand over to him. And these guys get so aggressive. One of them looks at me as if to say, you know, how do you give to him and then say he must share with me? Don't you know the rules of the street or whatever? And I just felt incredibly scared and nervous. And I realized that part of what made me feel comfortable about lockdown was the fact that I wasn't having to confront being a woman on South African streets every day and the lived realities of that. And so being locked away in my home gave me the feeling of safety because my home is safe. And then again, it brought up questions about people whose homes are not safe spaces. So it's been a very interesting time for me in just interrogating so many questions that keep coming about myself and myself in relation to others. It's been great. on many levels, but it's also been challenging on so many levels. And so that's where I'm at.
Sure, great. Thank you. Is anybody else brave enough to put up their hands? Unmute yourself and I will see
I'll
you.
say something.
Didi?
Yes. I'm going to start my video also so you can see me.
Please.
See me. Yeah. I don't know. I want to share my little experience of lockdown. So just before lockdown, my friend and I were actually on vacation and we almost got locked in that country. So we came back and I live in Durban, so I had to take a million flights everywhere to come back here before the country actually shut down. And the first bit of it, I was mostly with my friend here. I had taken the time to rest anyway, so there was a lot of baking and home goods going around, a lot of weight being gained. But the second bit was a little strange, the second month of the lockdown, because my friend had to go back to where she lives. So she's back in Johannesburg and I am alone. And I love living alone. I'm an introvert, as some of you know. This is bliss for me. But I have found myself quite lonely. I don't know how to operate without people around me, even though I actually prefer people not around me. So I think that's been an interesting discovery for me personally. Somebody who has thought of herself as an introvert all this time is actually missing people. And I've thought about what I'd like to do once we're allowed out again, you know, out into public. And I'm quite excited to actually go out, and I'm not going to cancel plans anymore. So yeah, those are my reflections of the lockdown. Yeah.
Not going to cancel plans anymore.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Never canceling plans anymore.
I appreciate the plans now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. Z, would you like to?
Yeah, so I was just thinking, let me just first talk about Miss Introvert here. So as an example, have you been able to reflect deeper about whether or not you are an introvert? Or is that probably something that you've been socialized to believe?
I
If
think
the soul is continuously longing for, because also it's not about liking or not liking people, it really is about where do you get your energy from when it's depleted. So for me, extroversion is I have to go to a loud place, even if I'm sitting alone, as long as I'm getting energy from others, then that replenishes me. And introversion is the opposite of that. You want to be alone because you get it from within yourself, you see. So then the question I would have is, in that stillness, in that going inside me, the house, the question would be, do I really not want to be around people if my soul is longing for human energy? You see, hence I said the question then is, what does it mean to be human?
That is so true. That is so true. I totally agree with the saying, because I have always been known to be an introvert from my family, people who have met me. I worked with some of you here. I've always been known to be quite an introvert. And I didn't realize that maybe not all my energy comes from the alone time. I think there is an energy that I do appreciate and I'm lacking at the moment from other people and having people around me.
So that's one of the gifts of the corona, you see. So you can reflect further on that. So if you were to meet a coach now, you would have a goal that would be around, am I truly who I think I am? Do I need to disintegrate this thing and put it back together in my own terms? And that would probably be freeing for you. Thank you for that contribution. And for Zoya, Zoya, I like her point. So she speaks about privilege ignored. So, and I can resonate with that because Zoya, we've spoken about this before, where we even touched on the fact that you had to go buy food when food is finished. all of a sudden we realize we've been misusing food and we've been buying things and they get rotten when they didn't use them and so on. But buying the essentials has forced us to rethink how we even deal with our own refrigerators and what is inside in terms of privilege. And I like how you position that in contrast with underprivilege and lack. Because if you now start to see other human beings who lack what you have, the perspective is different, regardless of what they're lacking and what you are having. And that would be the gift that Corona would have given us if some of us didn't have that view before. And the part around women and safety as well, it's a very interesting one. It's a very interesting one. And look, Lisa spoke about purpose. Others have to come back to self and come and rethink whether or not they are in purpose in what they do daily. And in your examples, Zoya, there's a lot of opportunities that once you know your purpose, you figure out your native genius, you would see where you are needed. You would see in the world, in the communities, in the human spaces where your native talent is needed. And it's better you focus your energy on that than what you've been taught to like, that you probably don't love. So I suppose, again, disintegration. And I like that the worm is water or fluid, Christo, because fluid is moving, it's constantly moving. And it gives us an opportunity to acquire new things and be open to learning new things. It's okay. Any other views from your side, Christo, about these experiences?
No, I think it's fascinating. I think as we become conscious of the things that trigger us and that irks us and that discomforts us, etc., 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 it's really a great gift to not be in a position to run away, where you can actually get rid of the discomfort or go hide from your anger or go, sublimate in some other way, some other experience. Because then in some way an opening is created where you can observe more deeply. And I think the observe point is an important point when we get to the theory U as well. Because that's what it takes. It takes that just observe and not reacting. Just observe and not trying to get out of the state in which you find yourself.
Absolutely.
And so on. And then just the point, Didi, you mentioned loneliness, and I'm in the unfair position to know your Enneagram type. So, and it is interesting because I actually think Enneagram 6 tend to be quite social people with strong social connection. It's a very, very important thing. But just the point about loneliness for me is the critical distinction between loneliness and being alone. Because being alone is almost a choice you make, and you can make it very consciously that now I'm going to be alone. I take myself out of that context, and I need to spend time with myself and actually have interaction, dialogue, conversation with myself, or silence with myself. But loneliness, I think, is something that is endemic, pandemic, really, in our society. Our society is a society of loneliness. I mean, Hannah Arendt, she speaks about the 3 big conditions of our time: homelessness, rootlessness, and loneliness. That our time is creating, and loneliness feels like an imposition, something that's forced onto you, and speaks to a lack, something that's missing, as opposed to aloneness, which is, there's nothing missing in alone because everything is there, all one. But loneliness is that lack, and then I guess we get the time to ask, but what is really lacking?
Thank you very much for that, Christo. That's an interesting one. Being alone, being a choice, and lonely, being a pandemic. That's an interesting one. Can I just be naughty, Lizel, and just ask two guys to just share with us how they experienced the pandemic and or the lockdown? I would like to pick, if you don't mind.
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
I'm sorry if I'm gonna pronounce the name incorrectly. It's Ivor or Ivor, Ivor, I-V-O-R. Yes.
Good morning. Yes, Ivor. Ivor answer to most things. I work from home. So the biggest change to me when lockdown came was that everybody else stayed home. I'm used to 2 adults and 2 kids going off to work and school at 6:30 in the morning and having my office and my quiet time to do my work. Suddenly you've got grandchildren running around and everybody else interfering and sharing everything there. But I was also blessed that there were 5 of us in lockdown together. We've lived in this house for 25 years now. And if I tell you that I've discovered parts of the garden that I've sort of known were there, but we spent a lot more time outside. We did that. If you had to talk on the phone, you don't sit at your desk, you get up and you walk outside and you talk there. So it sort of opened my eyes to what we actually have around us. We were denied all sorts of things that we couldn't have, and yet we needed none of them because we had everything else around us. I think that was the most important part.
Sure. That last part is powerful. Can you just repeat it again? Sure.
We were in lockdown. We couldn't shop. We couldn't buy. We couldn't go out. We couldn't do anything. You know, we felt so sad for ourselves. And then you suddenly realize how much you already had around you at home. Not having shopped or done, what do you women call it, retail therapy for 9 weeks. And in fact, we sit around chatting now and saying, well, did you really need that? Or now that we can go out and go and buy, actually, no, we don't want to go out. We don't need to go out and go and buy. Yes, you've got to buy the essentials. I must admit, having got the duty of the one, you know, they decided I was the oldest, I'd had a good life, so if anyone was going to get attacked by the virus, send me. I learned to shop and buy for all sorts of things that I didn't know we bought in this house, food-wise. Yes, I was one of those husbands standing in the checkers with my list, wondering which aisle I should be in. And it's actually bad because you want to talk to the person next to you and say, excuse me, you look like you know what you're doing, can you help? But you don't want to talk. There was that eeriness out there for those first couple of weeks. You go to the shop, you don't touch base with anybody, you keep your distance, you buy your stuff and you come home. And I think that was wrong of us. We didn't quite know how to handle social distancing. Something I discovered early on, I felt the need, not for them, but for me, to thank the cashier and the packer when I left Checkers. You know, normally you rush in there, you buy your goods, you pay with your credit card and you walk out. Why do I need to thank you? You're lucky you've got your job and you're doing that. But suddenly we were now hearing about people in lockdown and the frontline people that were having to go to work and to risk themselves so that we could go to the shop and buy our essentials. And I was sort of surprised how many people didn't thank them. You know, I took note standing in the queue that people were just still sort of shopping and going. But I think that was part of lockdown 101. We didn't quite know what to do with ourselves for the first couple of weeks. But I felt the need to communicate with them. And it's very difficult because, you know, we didn't have masks in the early days, but they had masks and shields and we were all keeping our distance. And every time you touched something, she'd whip her cloth out and wipe where you touched. You needed to thank them. You know, we assumed frontline people was just the nurses and the doctors. Yet, if I look at the infection rates, it's amazing how many of those supermarket stores had to get closed because they were suddenly confronted and having to deal with it. So you ask yourself, I'm living my cool life. I'm going there. I'm getting everything that I could get. And I say, well done to South Africa that we managed to have everything in stock that you needed. But they were having to sit and say, geez, you know, I'm not a nurse, I'm not a doctor, but I'm at the coalface, I'm in the front line here. And does anyone actually acknowledge my existence?
Absolutely. Wow. So absolutely. It actually, your explanation is really, or lived experience has really given some content under my, what does it mean to be human, really, because now all of a sudden we're now seeing each other regardless of positions or anything like that, but we're starting to value one another, which I think as a thinking, feeling that we should take forward when things go back to how they used to be. And I love what you say. Suddenly we thought we didn't have, but actually we always had. We always had stuff around us, but we're too busy with being busy that we didn't see that we have, which is why we need now to be more conscious about our having and be aware of what we have, and which speaks directly to the raising of consciousness and thinking differently going forward, because nothing is going to be the same ever again. So thank you very much for that. And I suppose even the cashiers, what they want to be seen, human beings, they really want to be heard and seen. And that's all we're here to do, to see and to be with each other. And I think I have so one of the answers I got when I asked myself, what does it mean to be human? And some of the answers I'm toying around with is being human is being good and love. It's just being good and love, because even in the seeing, I see you, I care about you, thank you for helping me. That's love, and that's being good. At the core of who we are, really, we are that. And I suppose every one of us, when we say, what does it mean to be human? We have then to say, who am I? So what does it mean to be human? Then who am I? Why am I here? And once you can answer those things, or if you can't answer those things, then you say, now what? Now what? Okay? What does it mean to be human? Who am I? Where am I here? Now what? Am I doing what I need to be doing? Or rather, put differently, what do I need to do to channel myself into alignment with why I'm here? I suppose that's one of the reasons why we're having these conversations, and me and Christo has chosen the theory U to start showing people the first steps of uncovering who you are and why you're here. Okay. Can I have the last one just for 5 minutes or 2 minutes, Liz? It's Lionel. Lionel. Over.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good morning, everybody. And thank you for giving me the opportunity. I work for essential services. So my experience has been somewhat different. It's been incredibly busy. It's been a time where within the company there were so many changes that needed to be brought about, you know, in terms of protocols and new regulations and so forth. And we had to look at compliance from the staff. For me, it was incredibly busy in the sense that I needed to give support to the company, but at the same time, give support to my many staff members who were really experiencing difficulties, you know, in terms of dealing with all of these changes, you know. So I learned I had to be a tremendous support to most people, okay, and I had to then kind of find new energies within myself, you know, to kind of deal with those kind of issues here at work. And then I would go home, and I know you guys are speaking about being introverted and so forth, and I regard myself as being introverted because I enjoy my quiet and I view myself as being very spiritual, you know. But then I would get home, and my family was in lockdown. Okay, so I would have to be a support to my family. Okay, I have a 7-year-old son. I have a daughter, a beautiful daughter who's in the 6th. Okay, who's really, really, I mean, she's really been struggling, you know. And I have a beautiful wife who has been working from home, you know, trying to keep things going there at home, you know. So I didn't find too much time for myself, you know. I would find myself feeling frustrated. I felt a sense of disconnect. I'm kind of looking for that spiritual connection, which was somewhat lost for me, because my spiritual connection was really experienced in the sense of community, you know, and I really miss that, you know, I really miss that. So yeah, that in a nutshell is basically been my my experience.
Thank you so much, Lionel. And tell me, are you not fearful? Were you not fearful of getting infected? How did you deal with your own fear about it?
Frankly, I wasn't fearful of being infected at all myself, you know. I must say though that my family, even though they were locked down and they were at home, okay, they wouldn't go out anyway, you know. So if anybody needed to go to the shop as well, you know, it would be please go to the shop, you know.
Okay. No, thank you very much for the contribution. And just a last question on my side. How did the family respond to you coming back from work after having been interacting with potentially infected people?
Okay, look, I think they understand that we've got very strict protocols here at work. You know what I'm saying? So the chances of being infected here at work is much lower than me being infected elsewhere. You know.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that contribution, Lizel. I'm done being naughty. I'm gonna hand over to you, and Christo, I'm just gonna share the presentation on my side. But if you could just please just ease us into the insights before, and then I will elaborate after you. Is that okay?
Z, sorry, did you ask me or Christo?
Christo.
Okay.
You're gonna bring up the slides.
Yes, I'm gonna bring up the slides. The first one is.
While you're bringing them up,
Mm-hmm.
I think just to position Theory U. Theory U came out of the work of Otto Scharmer. Otto Scharmer is one of the greats in organization development and organization transformation, and also working a lot on how do we fundamentally transform the organization. And Theory U came out of lots of reflection, lots of work in the organizations and with people, and lots of work in social systems, in larger social systems. So it also gives us a way to understand how larger social systems actually transform. Now, what usually happens when we go on a transformation journey, or we go, or we fall into the we fall into the self-improvement rat race, where we have to improve ourselves. We get a vision of what we want to be, or society gives us some perception of what we want to be, and then we measure ourselves and we see that we don't measure up, and there are some clear things that we need to change. So for instance, for me, I procrastinate, and I habitually procrastinate, and I procrastinate quite badly. And that's not very good, so I need to improve myself. So what do I want to be? I want to be proactive. So now I'm going to try to be proactive. And you all know that it doesn't work that well. You get it right for a few times, and then you slip back into the habit. And we keep spinning around. And I think that is, if we want to, for instance, if we go on this personal journey, or enter into a transformation process, is often we just try to shift things at the level of habit and action and personality. We try to change the habit or the personality, and we generally just revert until, you know, maybe something goes through, or we lose heart, and we begin to think that it's never going to work. So Scharmer says that doesn't work. He specifies 3 levels at which things take place, and we need to be open at 3 levels. And the first level is what he calls open mind. So we need to open our minds. we need to, and with open minds, I think to a certain extent what he means is pay attention to what's going on. See clearly. Just see. See, but see without judgment, because I can look at myself and say, I see procrastination, and I judge that to be a very bad thing, and now I'm going to change it, and it doesn't change. I'm still sitting in judgment of procrastination. So that's the first level, is see what's going on. Become very clear about the habits and actions and emotional attitudes and all of the things that we carry around. I think those of you working with the Enneagram is such an incredibly useful tool, and our first entry point in working with it is generally not to say, wow, what's your core fear? It's to say, what are your habits and how are they not working for you? And let's see that. And that's the open mind. The next level as we then go in is the level of open heart. And open heart is really about our connection with ourselves and with others. And we need to go into the space of the open heart to see how we are part of the problem we are trying to solve, how we are creating the problem that we are trying to solve, how we keep ourselves trapped in that which we want to shift. And I guess in COVID, one of the things that we could see is how we are part of certain problems. I'm sure those of you driving outside or going outside and just seeing the clean air would think like, well, you know, only there were less traffic. And then the next thing is, but I'm part of the traffic, and I'm part of the system that requires us to have heavy traffic and to pollute the air. It's not going to shift until I see that I am creating this challenge. And then the last part is open will, where I actually find the ability to act. So mind, heart, will is the three levels, and we go down towards will. We don't start by will. So, you know, to change ourselves is not a matter of willpower. It doesn't generally work to just try to enforce our will on ourselves. I'm sure those of you who smoke will know that even the government imposing its will on you doesn't work. So now what happens in open will is two things. The one is that we get to a point, once we have suspended the voice of judgment, held the space for listening and observing and seeing clearly what's happening, we actually get to a point where we can let go and become present. And Shama often talks about that as a point of retreat. And perhaps to a large extent, COVID itself, that's the way that I love to think about it, is that COVID itself is a space of enormous retreat. And if we go into a retreat, we can let the future come. It will reveal itself to us. We don't have to go look for the future, or we don't have to make up the future. When we go into visioning exercise, we don't have to actively construct a vision. It will appear to us. And that's a very magical process, because I think much of our work in organizations, and sometimes much of our work on ourselves and in ourselves, is quite instrumental. You know, I don't want to be too critical of the practice of vision boards and those kinds of things, but I do sometimes think that we make a vision board and it's a highly materialistic thing, and I want to drive a big car and have a beautiful wife and, you know, 3.5 children and a mansion somewhere, etc., etc. And we construct this vision, and we're not even sure that this vision is really coming out of us because it's so socially overdetermined. And then we have to go out and make that happen through a lot of hard work, etc., etc. We almost try to shape the future according to what we know now. And the theory U process says, no, we need to really observe and continue to observe. So that whole process from downloading, suspending, redirecting, letting go, that whole process is, Shama says, it's observe, 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 observe. Then retreat into silence. And when you come out of silence, it will be clear to you and you can act in an instant. And then sometimes we're astounded at the enormous pace at which personal and organizational transformation takes place. It's so fast and it's so effortless. And we wonder what we've been doing when it was such a hard slog to change myself. And I think that for me is the immense value of working with the U process. Is observe, observe, observe. Observe by seeing, observe by sensing. And let all of that go, even the ideas that you have that you think serve you well, your favorite ideologies, your favorite perspectives, your favorite beliefs about what it means to be a good person. Let go of all of that and see what the future is presenting to you. And then you can act in an instant, and then transformation doesn't take long. See, that's sort of my introduction to it.
Guys, we just have somebody who raised their hands. I don't know if it's David A or Davida.
Davida.
Davida. Davida?
Hi, Christo. Hi, Ziyanda. Is this a good time to ask a question?
Always.
Davida is about to ask, is that Davida?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Go ahead.
I love this model. It's very beautiful and it makes a lot of sense. I'm looking at the bottom bit, presencing. I'm asking, from an energy perspective, is that the lowest point? Because to my mind, that would make sense.
I
Or
don't.
is it just random, the curve?
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't see that whole process as an energy, as sort of like energy high or low, because I think you can have high energy at any point. And I actually think as you go down in the U process, you become more energized because you're dropping more stuff. But it certainly is, Davida, that point of presencing is a point that requires retreat into silence. There's no two ways around that. You have to retreat. You have to stop doing what you are. You have to stop. I think that's the point maybe about the virus, is we have to stop. Everyone wants to get into the new world so quickly. So, and the energy is frantic. Here at the bottom of the view, the energy is not frantic. The energy is calm and focused.
The reason for my question is I think if transformation, you know, at an individual societal level was an easy thing to do, was a painless process, we would all engage in it. But from time to time, having been stuck in perhaps unfruitful patterns or unhelpful patterns, and recognizing that, yes, I have to change this or that, is a painful moment. But as you go deeper into this awakening, the pain increases.
Yes.
Like a prisoner who is released after 30 years, sometimes he just goes and steals something small just to go back to the safety of the known. So that's why it seemed to me, from a dip in energy or from the work, because it's easy in my head to start the work. But you know, it's almost like that. Presencing is like you're on a little bit of a scale. You could just run back to safety of the known, however painful that was, or you plunge ahead. Yeah, so that's why I thought it has a, you know, it's like either energy or something. Where there's that depth, you can go either way, left or right.
Yes. Okay. Are there any other hands? Okay, sorry, Christo?
Yes, if I can just say something else about that, Davida, is I think you can also look at this from the perspective of traumatization and of coming to terms with traumatization. And as we come to terms with traumatization, there's a release of energy. So I completely agree with you. If you do the really deep work of this transformation, there is bound to be much pain and increasing pain as you I mean, if you just see your habit, it's painful. And then if you see, but you are creating and recreating this habit in your interactions with people all the time, that's a next level of I don't know, for me, sometimes embarrassment, shame, guilt, all sorts of pain that comes up with that. To the point, I think there of letting go, where there's a certain point where, okay, you know, it's actually really doesn't serve you to carry this around anymore. And you can let it go and go into silence, where I think Thomas Hubel also speaks about that, where in that moment, he speaks about witnessing, in that moment of witnessing and just witnessing, there's a letting go and an enormous release of energy. But it's very different from the energy that you generate all the time here at the top of the U, where you're downloading past patterns or just trying to shape past patterns into new patterns. That sort of frantic energy is a very different energy from that.
Now, other hand, Z.
All right. So I think, thank you very much for that summary, Christo. And just to add on, if I were to use that theory to explain what we've been doing from the beginning of the conversation. So me explaining how I perceived Corona, how I experienced lockdown, how my mind was starting to make me think that I was having symptoms as opposed to just having sinus. And also the examples from Zoya and Ivo and others to say, I started to download what I'm seeing. So as Zoya went to a fuel station, a garage, and could now see clearly that I'm not feeling safe. That was very in her face, in her awareness. She had downloaded that pattern, was right in front of her. So all we've been doing, if we were to use this theory, was to download the patterns, our past patterns. I say past current because what I was experiencing in March, though it was my way of thinking before the pandemic, it was also currently in the pandemic. So I was battling with how to experience it. I was battling to face the fact that I must be with myself, because I knew I didn't like the thoughts I'm thinking or feelings I'm feeling. And so the distraction and the noise has been silenced from the roads, and the physical things that I used to distract myself are tucked away. And there I was having to sit down and debunk, unpack, why am I uncomfortable with myself? And so that is downloading a pattern. So you can call it past, current, I'm not sure, but according to theory, it's downloading a pattern, because often if you cannot see something for what it is, it becomes difficult for you to start shifting the lenses if you cannot even agree that what you are looking at doesn't serve you, all right? And then what happens after that is, so Christoph spoke about suspension, suspending the voice of judgment to self. So whether I am uncomfortable with being with myself is neither right nor wrong, but I need to interrogate why that is, because I need to learn what I need to learn, right? So I have to suspend judging myself. That's because also if you are judgmental of self, you judge others, you give what you have. So it's very important for us also as humans to start the practice of not judging, suspending judgment to self. A colleague of ours would make this example, or Christo, I think has heard this before, Utumsani would say, how we suspend judgment is the same way you do when you are watching an action movie. and for a split second, you make yourself believe that a car can fly from one building to another. So in that moment, you suspend the judgment because you know cars don't fly. But if you were to adopt that thinking, you wouldn't enjoy the movie. So you suspend your attachment to the experience. And just to point to Christo's view, just observe it and allow it to teach you what it needs to teach you about you, right? That's the number one. And then once you do that, if you can suspend judgment, if you can suspend fear, if you can suspend cynicism. So until you've downloaded your patterns, now you are suspending the things that stand in the way, the obstacles that stand in the way of you starting to see something with fresh eyes. So I had to download that. I was starting to play mind games about my own physiological symptoms that were not even there. That was because I had fear. I then recognized that that's where I'm at. And I realized, okay, I need to be in control, consciously in control of my thinking patterns, because that way of thinking was gonna make me sick eventually. So I had to take advice. So where Christo says, does it serve you? Does the pattern you are displaying, having serve you? I realize it doesn't serve me. I'm not gonna judge myself about it, but I need to shift it. That is where I then started to see the pandemic and the coronavirus with fresh eyes. And the question I asked myself was, what would it have me learn? What does it mean to be human? What gifts does this thing give me? I was looking at exactly the same thing I was before when I was downloading old patterns, but with fresh eyes. As a result, what I started to see was the good benefits that come along with it. So I suppose once you start seeing something with fresh eyes, you start to redirect the way you interact with that context or that external stimuli or the situation or the environment you're in, which has landed me today in these conversations that said, okay, if you are able to change your own way of thinking about the pandemic, and by doing that, you started to see the gifts that it has, why not share that with other people? Redirecting now how I was behaving before and after I've had the fresh lenses, looking at the very same situation. So now, because of these type of seminars, I'm starting to sense from fresh fields, which is everyone. Because now I've allowed myself, I've opened myself into receiving even differing views. It's okay. Everything is okay the way it is. It is what needs to happen for me to learn something mostly about me and secondary about others. So that's where the allowing happens. But I must re-emphasize this. It is very difficult to start having fresh eyes if you are still attached to judgment, cynicism, and fear. Because those things, there will be obstacles between you and having new lenses through which you're seeing the very same thing that you were seeing before. And if you are like me, right now you are attending these sessions and they're equipping you with new ways of dealing with the same pandemic, in the same situation you've been in, you start to let go of things you have no power to control. There are things you have no direct power to influence. There are things you have direct power to influence. And you start to think differently about, where do I add value? Where should I extend myself? Where shouldn't I? To the question about energy, the energy that we have depends a lot on our thinking patterns. Because you think, then you feel, depending on the emotion that you feel, you're either gonna feel heavy or light. So a number of my clients would say, I feel very sad because I cannot go help communities. I'm tucked at home and people are hungry. And I said, start downloading or suspending that judgment. Everyone is capable of looking after themselves. Yes, with support and guidance from others from time to time, but start to believe that everyone is okay. Everyone is capable to help themselves. And start to look at the very same situation differently. And you would see, like Christo says, it will just come to mind what you need to do for that community. I personally knew I could not go to World's View and ask 20 people to come have a conversation that we are having now, but I wanted to share with them that if you can change the way you think, you can change the way you feel and the way you see. And I wanted to do so during the pandemic because this is helping us craft the new way of being, whatever it is. So what I did was to let go of the negative thoughts about the pandemic, adopted positive thinking, and this solution that we are sitting doing now just dropped in my mind. And here we are. I then attracted like-minded people like all of you who are thinking the same way. What does it mean to live during this pandemic? How will life be beyond it? Am I open enough with it? Am I ready for it? Am I okay with not knowing? Am I okay with uncertainty? And some people have been saying, all of a sudden things are uncertain. And I said, let's download that pattern as well. Things were never certain. We convinced ourselves that things were. We never knew how tomorrow was going to pan out, even before the pandemic. All of a sudden, we act like we knew. So it's also becoming comfortable with the discomfort of uncertainty and normalizing that. So if we've been talking about re-socializing ourselves, new norms and values, perhaps the coronavirus has just lended the opportunity for us to shift these norms and values and allow them to be whatever they are and let go of what used to be and allow what needs to come, which talks to the being present, being present, which is presencing, and connected to source. And for me, source first is you. And so if you've gone back at home in the 21 days and you realized, ouch, I used to think I'm an introvert, but I crave people, which means I crave other people's energy. Let me interrogate that further. I'm not making it wrong or right. I want to see it with fresh eyes. Let me sense it differently. And let me let go of what I was taught about myself. Let me open up to what comes and just see how I respond to start to pick up who I am in my own terms so I can be present, so I can hear my thoughts, so I can understand my emotions. So I think, Christo, I thought that we could at least share that left side with them and they can ask questions now just to make sure that we're kind of flowing together.
Great. I don't know if anybody wants to put up their hand. There's if you go to participants, you can do things there. Put up your hand. Otherwise, unmute yourself. We'll see.
I see an interesting comment from Zoya. When you see something with fresh eyes, I can imagine it can ease the letting go. The attached meanings might get watered down or change altogether. I think so, Zoya. And I also think, though, that sometimes seeing with fresh eyes, and we can't skirt around that, is painful. Because I think much of our habituated seeing is directed towards keeping us out of pain, keeping us out of discomfort, etc., etc., etc. So it's this. It's really the heart, that sensing space, the space where we go into the heart and open the heart. The opening of the heart on the left side of the U is painful. I almost, for the people working with the Enneagram, for me, that's almost the Enneagram 4 point. It's the open heart is the Enneagram 4 point. If you go over to the other side where you have vision and intention crystallizing, that's the healthy Enneagram 7 point. That both work with this the seeing of possibility, but our complicity in this world. Seeing with fresh eyes for me, for instance, you know, for instance, the way in which it perhaps became for us really clear, those of us who were not clear about this, the structural inequalities in society and what I would almost call the tragedy of the essential workers. These are, the essential workers are people, whether they're hospital staff or whether they supermarket staff. We are absolutely dependent on this huge number of our fellow citizens. And most of the time they're fairly invisible to us. And the structural inequality that they are faced is invisible to us. And as we went down into this thing, we had to see that the people we're paying least are the people we're putting most in danger in society. now I think we can slip back and sort of zone out again and sublimate and deceive ourselves about this structural inequality. Or we can see that we are actually part of the system which keeps certain people in danger and underpaid. So yeah, I don't know about ease. The more I think about ease, that's also just my perspective, because I know that I'm looking for ease. If it's not so easy, it's not so bad. We need not necessarily look for ease in letting go.
Christian Z. D put up her hand. D, would you like to make a comment or ask a question?
It's more of a comment, I think. I think for me, the lockdown and the whole pandemic threw my life in a different spin. I've always thought of myself as a career woman, as ambitious, as I'm not a stay-at-home type person. So suddenly in March, my career came to a screeching halt because I couldn't go to work. It was first off for 2 weeks, off for a week, then suddenly the lockdown happened. And I had to stay home with my kids. And my nanny got stuck in Lesotho. So I am without a nanny, I'm with the kids by myself. And suddenly I had to be this thing I've run away from my entire life. And it's been absolutely so pleasant being home with the kids. It's opened a different side to me that I was never open to. So now I'm like this now, like, what does this mean now? Does it mean that side has died? Like, I'm a bit stressed now because I don't know when suddenly we have to go back to work. Now what happens? Like, I'm like stressed a bit because now I'm suddenly a stay-at-home mom, and I have fought all these years to never be just a woman at home raising kids and my husband is out there. It's never been me. And now suddenly I'm that person and it's actually pleasant. And it's like, now what? Yeah.
That's a very interesting one, Dee. Thank you for sharing. Christo, where could she be in the year? What can she do in the year to start answering the hey, now what?
I don't know. Watch, observe. Don't try to figure out what's next. Too hard. This for me is the thing. Is we live in this ideology that we have to design the future, which is a massive level of self-deception, you know, and it runs all through our organizations and all through our life. You have to design for yourself a super career. So the question almost for me is to sit back and to say, well, I think these questions that you ask, what do I really believe about myself? Where do those beliefs come from? Is that all there is? What else is there? And to sit with that for a long time until you go quiet, and then to sit in quiet until the quiet is over. This is like a counterintuitive in our society that says you must solve problems and you must get going and you must fix the economy and you must do this and you must do that. And all we're going to do is we're going to go back to the old stuff and be as unhappy as before. So we don't have to go over there. We can wait, especially, and I say this because I know that I am very privileged to be able to do that. It requires a certain privilege. I don't have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and catch a taxi to be working in a supermarket where I can serve wealthy people. I don't have to do that. So it's a certain privilege to be able to go to sit with things and to wait until it comes to you. But this waiting is not inactive. I think that's an interesting for me, because sometimes we think that when we retreat and we go into silence, it's sort of a passive mode. I'm not talking about the passive mode. It's a mode in which you pay attention. You pay attention to what's coming up, and you maybe also pay attention to the emptiness and the silence that comes back into your life. Because then you will also be able to pay attention to what the future is really presenting to you as this is what's coming into existence right now for me. That is right.
That's an interesting one. Thank you. Thank you, Christo. As you were speaking, I like the point about answering this question about privilege to wait. And it's a good point, because not everyone has that privilege to wait and allow things to be. And also, I think we need to explain this one of letting go. Letting go is not giving up. Actually, it's letting go of the attachment to how the outcome must be.
Yes.
So you've let go of judgment, you've let go of fear, you've let go of cynicism. Start to see this situation you're in with fresh eyes. And the more questions you ask, the more answers you get, because you are allowing, you've opened up, you've let go of the attachment of how things should be. Before the pandemic, you probably wanted to behave in this way because you wanted a specific outcome. Beyond the pandemic, you are like, okay, I'm gonna continuously interrogate or ask the universe questions and allow and wait. And so to Christo's view, really waiting is not allowing to, and waiting is not doing anything. And I think, Dee, if I can attempt to also respond to, now what? I've never imagined myself being a stay-at-home mom and only the husband working. Again, that's a nice old pattern that you just downloaded. And without judgment, because the judgment statement can be, but I've never seen myself as that woman who stays at home with the husband working. Can you hear the energy of that statement? So it's like, but I've never seen myself as a woman who just stays at home and look after children. And therefore, you gotta let go of whether or not being at home is right or wrong, and start looking at it with different eyes. Let go of the judgment of it. Just observe it for what it is. I'm now enjoying it. What does this mean for me? And then you keep an open mind, because an answer will come. And it doesn't, in my view, you don't have to interact with the same facts or same context the same way you did before. Now that you know what you know now about how to transition or transform yourself or your way of thinking, you now know you're gonna deal with it differently, and that's okay. And if I were to answer, or rather give an example using also some of the material on the theory U, where you are now, you are in the forest. You are aware that I'm in the forest. I can see no direction out of here. I'm aware that I'm in the forest. I'm nowhere. But the more you let go of the attachment of what this new thing means, and just letting go of the attachment to the answers and allowing the answers to come, so you can see the signs, so you can hear the stuff you need to hear, you will eventually know, you'll know that you are where I'm here in the forest. I'm nowhere, I don't know where I am. Oh, I'm in the forest, I'm here. So I'm aware that I'm here, but I still don't know where to go. Which is where people like us then start to think, okay, fine, I know I'm in the forest. I know I don't know how to get out of here. I therefore need a community of people so that I can know that I'm now here and we're probably going that side. I hope that makes sense. So for us to actually know that there's work that needs to be done, you must first know that you don't know what you don't know. And sit in that and observe that, and that's okay. Eventually you will realize, oh, I still don't know, but I don't know, but I know where I am. Okay, now that I've sat in that and processed and got my answers that I want from that state of thinking and being, now I'm here. Okay, I'm in this position. Here's my location. I'm here, and I'm wanting to go that way, but I understand the community of people around me, with me, so we can go that way. And that for me also summarizes really what it means to be human in this space we're in now. Especially recognizing when you don't know and being okay with not knowing. I can take any questions if there's anything I need to clarify further, or maybe examples that are coming up. People are realizing, oh, I'm in the forest actually. I didn't know that I don't know what I don't know. Oh, well, I'm not comfortable. So people can just share as well. So we can practicalize the science behind this whole transformation journey.
I'm wondering if Matilda wants to make a comment. Matilda, you've made some few interesting comments in the chat. Let's see if I can. Oh, you're on mute. Oh. Okay, anybody else?
Oh, sorry. Oopsie,
Oh.
I didn't see that one coming. Hi guys. It's quite dark here. I'm trying to get the light so that you guys can see my face. Is it working? There we go. Okay, so I suppose for me, coming into the lockdown, I had so many emotions to deal with personally because of the tragedies that I've been through. And having to be responsible of the teams that I have at work, it meant that I shouldn't focus on me and focus more on them, how to get them synthesized with the times that we're moving into. So I let go of myself, or rather I packed myself right in the corner. And I realized now in hindsight that actually I needed this, you know, because it helped me to come back home to myself and appreciate myself. And right now I'm looking at this at the slide with the forest, and it's actually soothing. It soothes me because it's like I'm in the jungle and I'm feeling free, and it's okay. Wherever I'm gonna head to from here, I'm gonna be okay. And it's okay not to know where I'm gonna be heading. So I guess that's where I am right now, trying to navigate the space, but being okay with the process and knowing that I'll be okay no matter what, no matter where I land myself. Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Anyone else? Oh, I'm gonna start picking up names.
You do it
because it's just very important for us to kind of practicalize, because of course it's science-based, it's research, it works, but sometimes one needs to really plug in their own lived experience into the theory, then it will actually land, and you will understand what it means to be. And actually, you might realize you actually have been okay with being in the forest. You just didn't realize it.
How's about Mumsy?
Yes, I was gonna go to her.
Were you? Okay, great minds. Hi, Mumsy.
Mumsy.
Hi, everybody. Thank you to Ziyanda and Lisa and Christo. It's really nice connecting with you again. Really appreciated and enjoyed you unpacking the theory which is really insightful. And I think exactly like Ziyanda is saying, theories, as I was taught by Worldview, are sense-making tools. What keeps the theory alive is bringing in the practicality so that people can see that, yes, this theory really does work. I really got excited when you were talking about letting go. Obviously, letting go is really doing a deep reflection of where we are at. Like, you know, C-19 has really thrown us under the bus, if I can put it like that. We find ourselves in a storm, and in a storm, really it's survival of the fittest, as I've made my comments on the blog to say. For me, it has made me to think a lot about diversity, to say, yes, we think all of us are experiencing this the same, but we are actually not, because of there's other people. Can you imagine this picture of somebody who's sitting in, or who lives in a one-room shack with 10 other people? Would you say they're experiencing the lockdown similar to me? No, they are not, because of how do they do social distancing? 10 as they are in one room. So it's realizing that there's a storm and letting go, obviously, to say, yes, it giving us an opportunity to actually reflect a lot as human beings. Like Ziyanda was saying, really it helped, it made us to go back to basics and think about what is the value add? What is it that I can do that will help a fellow human being in this, at this moment? I was approached by some of the executives in our office, and I really could not imagine somebody saying, I cannot manage my team. That reminded me of what Ziyanda said. Micromanagers are the ones who are battling the most right now at this stage, because of the team is away, the team continue to work, and if you do not have trust in the people that you're working with, how are you going to believe that they are doing what they're saying they're doing? So it eats you up as a micromanager. And yeah, I think that for me, I want to see all the micromanagers coming out as transformed people who believe that other people will really commit and do what they're promising. Thank you. That's my info.
Thank you, Maxi. That's absolutely great. You're so right. We can use this tool absolutely to help those people, because what holds them back is the old patterns that they need to download, suspend judgment and fear around it, look at it with a fresh set of eyes or lenses, and start being present and start letting go of the control and the fear and the mistrust, you know. So absolutely the theory, you can work with those type of managers for sure. And I like what you're saying, because it's easy for us who are sitting in houses that allow for more people to just be inside the house to forget that there's someone who is in a one hot shack with only 1 or 2 windows and 1 door. And we, from afar, we can judge them when they don't socially distance like we do, or when they don't sit inside the house like we do. And for a split second, we forget that we are from a privileged lenses. And that's, again, the power of just suspending judgment. Because when you suspend judgment, you start to see things for what they are, not how you want them to be, but truthfully for what they are. It is in that you are able then to come look within of how you could serve that context if you don't judge it. But if you judge it, that might be an obstacle for you that stands in the way of you taking from within you your native genius and talents and serving that community. So there's power. People often think that when we say you must go into self, to find self, to do the work that you need to do with self, they think it's a selfish act. And I call it a self-full act, because once you are full of all the gifts and benefits, you then have no option. Your energy wants to give them out. So purpose is given to you to give to others, but often we're not in purpose because we have not had the conversations we need to have with self, and we are uncomfortable observing self. So absolutely, I agree with you. We need to do more and to assist those type of managers. And I think everything, or most of the things that we're talking about today, they really start with the mind. There's just a thinking. That's the awareness of the direction of your thoughts, you know? Because I think, Christo, you can share your view with this one, or even the participants. The president said something along the lines of, our lives are in our hands. And a number of people in my community of people, at least, took offense from that statement. And the question I asked was, Kanti, whose hands are in your life? Kanti, all this time, who did you think is responsible for your own life? Then it also shows that to some extent, we've also abdicated the inner power we have, and we gave it to something that we don't even know. And we're sitting here with hands in the air thinking we have no power to shift the things we need to in our context or in our areas of influence. Again, that's abdication of an opportunity to do something differently with all that you are and that you have.
Z, I see there's an interesting question from Davida around sitting still, and then the question is, so the defense mechanisms and the habitual patterns and all of those things come up, and then we take them away. What do we put in their place? Davida, I mean, for me, that's a really interesting question, and I think it's sometimes a question of death psychology approaches versus positive psychology. I think positive psychology would say that you need to find something positive and put it in its place. If you want to change a habit, you have to find a new habit and replace it with that habit. I'm coming to believe that that's not the case at all. I'm really coming to a perspective that the defense mechanism is keeping us stuck so that we can't do what our true being wants to express. And so if we just sit and watch the defense mechanism and actually really get perspective on the defense mechanism, because I don't think we ever quite get rid of the defense mechanism, but we can start to see it in action. Then we can be conscious around that, and then we create space and energy for something else to happen. And we can watch that as well and see what it is. That's what I think. I don't think we have to do anything. We don't have to sit and get a vision. We don't have to go look for new things that we can do. Those things will present themselves to us if we don't stop it all the time by undermining ourselves with our habits and our defense mechanisms and fixations and all of those things. It's enough to just touch. And that actually ensures that you don't revert. Because, you know, I've been smoking for such a long time. And then I managed to get myself off smoking, and then I managed to get myself on it again. So I think the risk of reverting is much more if you don't get to the root. But even then,
that's okay.
In some way, there's a certain level where actually it doesn't matter.
Exactly. So I think if I can just take one point that you made to Davida there, the true being wants to express itself. That's very key, you know. And if I can practicalize it, so what I do for a living, so I'm an HR practitioner by background. I'm a student of psychology by academy, right? So it means I have probably enough skills and knowledge to do some profession somewhere and be okay, which I was for 12 years, until I did this transformational work, downloaded certain stuff, suspended certain stuff, started to see things with new eyes, then a new reality started to show itself up. And it showed itself up as me, as a speaker on issues regarding leadership, as a coach for leaders, and as a facilitator for leadership interventions. And it's very interesting because wherever I speak in platforms where let's talk about public speaking on a radio or on a stage, allowing the true being to come through and do what it needs to do, exactly that. I would prepare content like this because my IQ understands what I need to explain, but 80%, if not more, of what happens in that stage has to do with the true being expressing itself. I'm not sure if I'm making any sense. But if you are still going through life with what was instilled in you about you, that is not necessarily you. You might not find your true self yet. This is why we say go within, because we want to go and reawaken self. You have not lost yourself. You are not rediscovering yourself. You just need to reawaken yourself. The true self wants to express itself. My mother often asks me when she listens on my conversations on radio, and she asks, how do you know the answers to the questions? Do people send you questions up front? Then you prepare how you're going to answer them. How do you know how to answer them? And why is it that they always feel answered by you, but you didn't prepare the answer up front? And I always say to her, it's because when I do my work, which is what I'm doing now, I completely let go any attachment of how I should sound like I should say, and I allow the true being to express itself. That's how it looks like in behavior, if I can explain it like that. And the same can be the case for all of us.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Z. Davida, have you put your hand up again? Or is it just still up?
Yeah, I was just saying, just to bring it back to the earlier point about trauma, and positive psychology and defense mechanism is old school. But if we change the language to say, yes, we were born as complete and true human beings. And as a result of trauma, we develop certain mechanisms to protect the self, which is what we call defense mechanisms. So now that perhaps, and these behaviors become habituated over time, the fact is now you let go of them. What do you replace it with? And how do you let go of behaviors that have not been serving you? It used to serve you, and these are not choices that people make. If you are traumatized at a young age, these protective mechanisms kick in automatically. So it's a matter of stripping yourself of those behaviors and thoughts and thinking patterns. The question is, how do you do that? The question is, what then do you replace it with? Look at alcohol. People simply say, after 21 days, you get rid of a habit. Have we seen the lines at the liquor stores and the uptake in violence related to alcohol? So, as far as I'm concerned, it's not that simple. Defense mechanisms is perhaps a word that is become less popular, but it's a way of protecting the true self. So, how do we recognize them? How do we replace them? Because they have to be replaced by something else. More behaviors that would serve us that might be a little bit less harmful. Because as soon as level 3 came in and people could buy liquor again, they rushed to get the thing that numbs the pain. And we all have various things that numb the pain. I'm all for positive psychology, but we have to acknowledge. We have to acknowledge that it's not that simple. 21 days don't dehabituate us of anything.
No, it's not simple, Davida. I think anything that promises simplicity is snake oil, because this work is hard work and it's painful work. And if you're serious about it, it will take you into painful places. And if you're really serious about it, you will actually have to stay in those painful places for as long as it takes, without trying to make the pain go away. And of course, we will slip back and we will numb the pain at times, etc. So in answer to that, I think practice is important, whatever it is that you are practicing. Some practice. I think therapy and coaching and those kinds of approaches are important. I think those kinds of approaches are important because they hold you while you are going into your liquid state. They hold you. And then this is maybe just faith from me. Is I have faith that if we go there, right down into the bottom of the U, and we are there properly, I have faith that something else will emerge that serves us and that serves our communities. That we will come out of that maybe more integrated, more whole, accepting of ourselves, maybe less desperate to fix ourselves and to change ourselves and do all of those things. There's a lot of counterintuitive things in there for me. But I think if we can do the work of going in and being inside and do the work of letting go, the work of letting come will take care of itself.
Thank you, Christo. Oh, sorry.
It will be revealed. I mean, if you are an Enneagram 3 like C, then what will be revealed is your incredibly high quality of authenticity, and your actions will speak of that authenticity. When you get rid of all the things that is in your personality structure, that, as you rightly say, as you have developed those things as survival mechanisms to protect yourself, and they no longer serve. But when that happens, something can emerge that's more whole.
I agree with you, Christo. Thank you, Davida, for those questions. And you are absolutely right. These are very raw, ugly, not nice sometimes patterns that we've had in our past. And you're right, the defense mechanism becomes the way that the being protects itself from potential harm. And one of the things that the coaching process does is to update that software, as I would like to call it. And that's where we said it's disintegration. So you pull things apart, literally, because in the self-awareness consciousness work, you have to look at the things for what they are.
Ooh, Z's frozen. Z, if you can hear us, maybe switch off your video. Yes, and it lasted so nicely. She said to me yesterday she's worried about her connectivity, and yeah, maybe while we're just waiting for Z, I just want to thank everybody for being here. We were 34 people at one point, which is beautiful. I love how this platform allows for that. And I want to urge you to come back next week. Next week we have an international speaker. Christo?
Yes, Alon Shevat is what I would call a veteran OD practitioner. And I met Alon just on Twitter and started talking to him because he seemed interesting, and he seems to be in very high regard about some of the other people I follow and talk to that I hold in very high regard. And the thing that Alan said that got me, he said a number of things that got me. The one thing he said that got me, he said that there are no mergers, there are only acquisitions, as a reference to mergers and acquisitions. So I said to him, well, that's interesting. So one of the things he'll talk about is his experience, long experience, about 4 or 5 decades of working in mergers and acquisitions, no less than 12 big ones. And then he said something else yesterday that was interesting. He said one of the things that OD must do is to get rid of its Western bias in its values. Now, that's a question I want to ask him more about. And then also, how does he see the work of OD and supporting leaders in our time? So he'll be joining us from Tel Aviv, where he's, I don't know, in retirement, quite locked down, but still mentally alive and contributing to the conversation.
Very much so, right? So that's same time, same place next week. Everybody that's interested, we'll be using the same Zoom link as well. I see Z is still frozen in the middle of explaining something to us. I'm going to, and it stops sharing the screen. So yeah, so thank you everybody. If you want more of this, if you want to think with us about applying the theory U theory in any of the work that you do, we've been using it in transformational work in individual levels, team levels, large organizational levels, or any of this work. I was thinking while we had this session, I know a lot of people that needed to be on this call today, that would have been so much value for them because they haven't really processed. And the odd check-in with a friend that actually gets it is not necessarily enough. So if you think of more people that needs this kind of thing, more work in your organization, individual level, please let us know. I see we don't even have Z on the call anymore. Sure. I'm sure she would have wanted to say thank you as well. And in her absence, I want to say thank you for her, for giving so freely and graciously of her time and her wisdom. So thank you, everyone. Hope to see you back here next week. If